Today we have to listen Ariya Sacca, Four Noble Truths. The teaching of the Four Noble Truths is very important among the teachings of the Lord Buddha. Actually, whatever the Buddha taught during his 45 years of ministry can be reduced to the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. So it is an important subject. Before we go to the Four Noble Truths, first we must understand what Sacca truth means according to the teaching of the Buddha. Now, what is truth? It is very simple. It is something that is true. So it is something that is real, something that is not otherwise than it is stated. So truth is not like illusion in a magic show, because in magic shows the illusions are untrue. Also, it is not deceptive like a mirage. You see a mirage from a distance and you think that water is there, but when you get close to it, it disappears, it runs away from you. So truth is not like a mirage which is deceptive. Also, truth is something that can be discovered, that can be known. In Buddhism, that is what is called truth. So actually, anything which is true, which is real, is called Sacca, truth in Buddhism. Truth need not be lofty, truth need not be good, but whatever it is, if it is true to what has been described, then it is the truth. Now, hotness of heat in fire. Heat in fire is the truth of, because it is only true that whatever thing is comes into contact with, it will heat it up, it will burn it. So that heat in fire is the truth. And also, you know, the second noble truth is craving, tanha. Tanha, craving, is an unwholesome mental state, but it is also called truth in Buddhism. So in Buddhism, truth need not be good only, truth need not be wholesome only. It can be both good and bad, wholesome and unwholesome. People say that there is only one truth, and that different teachers express it in different ways. But in Buddhism, there is not one truth, there are four truths. These four truths are called noble truths, Ariya Sicani. They are called noble truths because they are to be realized by the noble ones, They are to be penetrated by the noble ones. In Buddhism, those who have attained enlightenment are called noble ones, Ariya. Those are the Buddhas, the Pichika Buddha, Arahants, and also those who have reached the lower stages of enlightenment. So these personas called noble ones. The four truths taught by the Buddha are called noble truths because they are to be penetrated by the noble ones, they are to be understood by the noble ones, they are to be realized by noble ones. Actually, when they become noble ones, they have already penetrated these four noble truths. Here we use the term noble to describe those who are trying to become noble ones. So these truths are called noble truths because they are to be penetrated by noble ones. And second meanings of noble truth is that it is truth of the noble ones. Here the noble ones means the Buddha. So these are the truth of the Buddha. That means these are the truths discovered and made known by the Buddha. Others who penetrate these truths do so depending on the Buddha or relying on the Buddha. That is why in this sense they are called noble truths because they are the truth of the Buddha, the truth possessed by the Buddha or the truth discovered by the Buddha, the truth taught by the Buddha. And the third meaning is that these are called noble truths because they are noble making. That means when a person penetrates them, he or she becomes a noble Ariya. So these truths make someone that penetrate them a noble ones. That is why these truths are called noble truths. In this sense, they are called noble truths because they make someone noble. Or when a person penetrates them, he or she becomes a noble person. What are these noble truths? There are four of them. The first noble truth is called dukkha, and truth is sacca. So dukkha sacca, or let's just say dukkha. The second noble truth is samudaya. The third noble truth is nirodha. When the fourth noble truth, it is a long name. It is dukkha nirodha gamini patipida. You can see mega sacca. The first noble truth, dukkha saccam pariññaya. It is important to understand the meaning of these words. First, the first word is dukkha. Dukkha is translated as suffering. The English word suffering does not cover all the shades of meaning possessed by the word dukkha in Pali. The word dukkha is explained in the commentaries as being composed of du and ka. There are many meanings of du and many meanings of ka. So in the Visuddhimagga, the meanings of du is given as despicable or vile, and ka means empty. Something that is despicable and something that is empty is called dukkha. Why is it despicable? Because it is the cause of all dangers and suffering. It is empty. That is, it is empty of an everlasting entity. It is empty of beauty. It is empty of lastingness. It is empty of pleasure. So it is called dukkha. So in this sense, dukkha means something which is despicable and at the same time which is empty. The other meanings of dukkha given in other commentary is something that is difficult to endure or something that is difficult to bear. Du means difficult and ka means endure or bear. So something which is difficult to bear is called dukkha. So this meaning makes more sense for us because whenever we hear the word dukkha, we understand some kinds of pain or suffering. As you will know later, even what we call happiness, sukha, is according to the analysis of Buddha, happiness is dukkha. So we will understand the word dukkha as something despicable and empty or something difficult to endure. Having come upon the four essential truths, Buddha enumerated them in their sequence. The first truth dealt with was the truth of suffering, dukkha sacca. Buddha described as jati, new becoming, rebirth, jara, aging, marana, death, soka, sorrow, prideva, lamentation, dukkha, physical pain, domanassa, grief and despair, association with hateful ones, separation from loved ones, not getting what you want, the five groups of clinging, all are dukkha. The first one Buddha mentioned, jatipi dukkha. Suffering of new becoming. By new becoming, rebirth is meant the dissolutions of nama and rupa, mind and matter, at the last moment in the last existence. And after that, the first moment of genesis of new Namarupa, new mind and matter in the new existence, as conditioned by karma. So the first genesis serving as a connecting link with the past life is called Patisande, linking conception in the initial formation of fresh mind and matter, nama and rupa. If this formation takes place in a mother womb, we have womb conception, kapasika patisande. It may be of two types, Andaja and Jalabuja. Andaja patisande oviparous, when the conception takes place in an eggshell in the womb, it is Andaja. Jalabuja patisande viviparous, when the embryo freely develops in the womb, till birth takes place. Womb conception, according to Buddhist scripture, has its origin in the semen and blood of the parents. Western medical science holds the view that conception results from the union of father's sperm and mother's ovum. The two views may be reconciled by taking that father's sperm and mother's blood are involved in a conception. This union of sperm and blood of parents, leading to the formation of resultant new nama and rupa, constitute what is known as jati, rebirth. Jati rebirth may take place either in the states of woeful states, by his or her past akusala karma, unwholesome deeds, or jati rebirth may take place in the states of human worlds as conditioned by past kusala karma, wholesome deeds. Conception in righteous leader media such as mosques, etc., Sansidaja, represent the coming into existence of some lavil, etc. And another Patisande, another birth is Opapatika. It is not visible by our human eyes, such as deities, deva, demons, ghosts, and denizens of the woeful states. Assume spontaneous rebirth or autogenesis, known as Opapatika Patisande. Opapatika conception with knowing mind and physical body completely developed. In all these four types of conception, the first moment of conceiving or genesis definitely constitutes jati. Jadi, beginning of new existence. At the first moment of genesis, there is no pain or no suffering, no physical pain, no mental pain. No suffering or pain exists at the first moment of Genesis. Since this first arising or origination of life serves as a basic for later appearance of physical pain and mental suffering throughout the whole of the ensuing existence, jati, rebirth is termed suffering. It is like putting your signature on a document as a guarantor of some questionable transaction. There is no trouble, of course, at the time of signing the instrument of the transaction, but as it is certain to give rise to later complication, the act of signing the document amounts to involvement in dreadful trouble or in other words sufferings. For further clarification, suffering may be classified under 7 categories. The first group, dukkha dukkha, viprinama dukkha, singara dukkha. So these 3 form one group. The second group, padecchana dukkha, apadecchana dukkha. These 2 form another group. And then priyaya dukkha and nipriyaya dukkha. These 2 form the third group. So the first dukkha is dukkha dukkha. Physical pain, bodily pain, aches, and discomfort are a form of dukkha, form of suffering, just as worry, misery, unhappiness, and sadness constitute Cetasika dukkha, mental suffering. These 2 form physical suffering and mental suffering combine to make the first type of suffering, dukkha dukkha. Its nature is suffering, its name is suffering, so it is dukkha dukkha. Dreaded by every sentient beings. So you understand what is dukkha dukkha? Unendurable physical suffering and mental suffering is dukkha dukkha. Another dukkha is viprinama dukkha. Pleasurable physical sensation arising from agreeable tactile impression is known as kayika sukha. Joyful state of mind arising from reviewing pleasant sense objects is known as cetasika sukha. These 2 forms of happy states please everyone, please every creatures. All beings go after these 2 happy states day and night, even to the extent of risking their lives. When these are attained, their happiness knows no bound, so happy. Nevertheless, while they are rejoicing with blissful contentment, if the sense objects which have given them much intense delight and enjoyment, despair, or get distressed, their agitation followed by intense distress would be great. When the wealth they have accumulated in the form of gold, money, or property suddenly is lost through fire, water, tornado, flood, thieves, etc. When death or separation comes to his beloved members of the family, spouse, or children, intense grief and distress ensue, which may even cause mental derangement. So these two forms of happiness, kaya sukha and cetasika sukha, physical comfort and mental joy, are also a type of suffering known as viparinama dukkha, suffering because of change. While they last, they may appear very enjoyable, only to be replaced by extreme grief and despair when they vanish. So they are dukkha all the same. So you remember the second dukkha, viparinama dukkha, that is happiness arising from physical comfort and mental joy. It is called viparinama dukkha. Another dukkha is sankhara dukkha. The ordinary everyday scenes which you see, hear, or comes into contact with in different sense objects inspires neither a feeling of pleasure or well-being, nor of pain or unpleasantness. This neutral media condition, which by its nature is neither painful nor pleasurable, is termed equanimous feeling, upekha vedana. This neutral equanimity, however, does not exist permanently. This neutral equanimity needs constant maintenance of necessary condition for continuity of this media state. This implies laborious effort, which of course is dukkha. So this equanimous feeling, neither painful nor pleasurable, is termed sankhara dukkha. In addition to this equanimous feeling, all the other formations of nama and rupa of the mundane sphere are also called sankhara dukkha, as they need constant conditioning. So you remember sankhara dukkha, equanimous feeling, and namarupa mind and matter formation of mundane sphere, they are called sankhara dukkha. And how about sukha vedana? Feeling of happiness also requires constant conditioning for its maintenance, and as such should be classified as sankhara dukkha. But the commentators left it out of this classification as it has been given a separate name as viprinama dukkha. Nevertheless, it should be regarded as sankhara dukkha too, since it is very plain that considerable application is needed for its maintenance. So we should understand these three types of dukkha. These three types of dukkha should be well understood. As a complete grasp of these types will help us in understanding the truth of suffering, dukkha sitya. Another group is paticcanna and apaticcanna dukkha. Paticcanna dukkha, there is physical ailments such as earache, toothache, headache, flatulence, etc., and mental affliction arising out of unfulfilled desire, burning rage, disappointment, miseries, and worries are called concealed suffering, paticcanna dukkha, because they are known only to the suffering individual and become known to others when only when intimated by them. As such, suffering is not openly evident. It is also called unevident, non-apparent suffering. Another one is apaticcanna dukkha, physical affliction, such as from sword scars, spear thrusts, or bullet wounds, is not hidden, but quite apparent and openly evident. So it is called exposed suffering, apaticcanna dukkha, or evident suffering, pakata dukkha. Another one is priyaya dukkha. All forms, all formations of nama and rupa which can give rise to physical and mental afflictions are not in essence suffering, because as they are the basic of suffering of one form or another, they are known as pariyaya dukkha, quite dreadful in view of the suffering which will surely arise from them. As in the example just given, it is dreadful like giving your guarantee to a transaction by signing a bond for which recompensation has to be made later. Another one is Nepriyaya Dukkha. This dukkha type of suffering is intrinsic. There is no beating about the bush as to its action, and is therefore known as direct suffering, viprinama dukkha. Of these seven types of dukkha, jati, or taking birth in a new existence, comes under priyaya dukkha according to the classification. All kinds of suffering in hell, such as subjection to millions of years of incineration by hellfires, torture by hell keepers, arise because of birth in hell as a consequence of his past unwholesome karma. All kinds of suffering in the realms of betas, hungry ghosts, such as starvation, scorching fires, for millions and millions of years, arise because of birth in that beta realms as a consequence of his akusala karma, unwholesome deeds. An animal kingdom. Hardship and trouble in the animal kingdom suffered by animals such as cattle, elephant, horse, dog, pig, chicken, bird, goat, sheep, insects, etc. arise because they happen to take birth in animal existence. Human misery, characterized by scarcity of essential for living such as food, clothing, etc., is brought about by the facts of taking birth in the human existence. Even when well provided for, as in the case of affluent people, there is no escape from suffering inflicted on them in the form of physical distress and mental distress due to sickness and disease or unfulfilled desire, fear of oppression by the enemies, aging, etc. So suffering in the affluent people. All these miseries come about because of jati, rebirth in the human world. Being thus the foundations for all the suffering that ensue throughout the whole span of life, taking birth in a particular existence, jati, rebirth is regarded as dukkha. When a person takes conception in a mother womb, he or she comes into being in a disgusting womb, which is situated between the stomach, filled with undigested food, and the rectum, the receptacle for excreta, feces, and urine, depending on his body substance, on the parent's sperm and blood. It is very loathsome indeed. The very thought of having to stay in the filthy mass of the sperm and blood is revolting and nauseating. And there is no knowing whether he has descended into human womb or the womb of a cow or a dog. And a Dharma teacher one time used to recite a verse, Dhamma cradle and Mara cradle, in the course of his sermons. The verse gave a description of various kinds of cradle, ranging from emerald-studded golden cradle for royal infants to the miserable wicker baskets of poverty-stricken families. In one stanza of the verse was the query, Aging is gradually creeping. For which cradle are you heading? Third question. Aging is gradually creeping. For which cradle are you heading? This question is quite relevant since after aging, what will come? Finally, after aging, death will come. And if craving tanha still remains, death will inevitably be followed by jati, rebirth in a new existence. Even if he is reborn in the human plane, he is bound to start life in one cradle or another. The question is, which kinds of cradle? Emerald studded golden cradle awaits those with abundance of wholesome karmas, while those burdened with unwholesome karma we head straight for a wicker basket in a wretched's home. So the verse was an exhortation urging people to do kusala karma, meritorious deeds for assurance of high-class cradle in their next existence. We would also ask you now just to ponder a while on the question of which mother womb you are destined to, and to become mindful of the dreadful suffering attendant upon birth and work for cessation of cycle of rebirths. Even if he cannot strive for complete liberation yet, at least endeavor for security against lowly destination. Now what we have described is how one is faced with dreadful suffering of rebirth from the moment of descent into the mother's womb. Then during the period of gestation, for 9 or 10 months, other suffering follow. When the mother suddenly moves, sit down or stand up, the extreme suffering he undergoes is like a kid being whirled around by a drunkard or a snake's young fallen into the hands of snake charmer. The young creatures in the womb of a modern mother, much given to athletics exercises, is likely to be subjected to more intense sufferings. When the mother happens to drink something cold or swallow anything hot or acid, his suffering becomes a real torture. So there are many dukkha, jatibi dukkha, but the suffering. To understand dukkha, what we have to do, we need to practice meditation. To understand dukkha, 5 groups of clinging, 5 upadana khanda, or every phenomena occurring at the 6 senses, or seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing, occurring at the 6 senses are dukkha. To understand dukkha, when we practice meditation, we practice rising, falling, sitting, touching, standing, walking, seeing, hearing, etc. The yogi personally perceives the fresh arising followed by instant perishing of both the objects of awareness as well as the noting mind. Yogi personally perceives arising and disappearing. It is awesome suffering, it is awesome dukkha because it oppressed by incessant arising and disappearing. And then it happens on its own accord. So now, to understand the truth of suffering, yogi practice sit, kaya nupassana, vedana nupassana, citta nupassana, and dhamma nupassana. And then finally, yogi understand the truth of suffering. So we continue next week. We have to stop our discourse for today. By practicing vipassana meditation, by observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses, by noting rising, falling, sitting, touching, seeing, hearing, continuously and meticulously, may all yogis understand the truth of suffering. May all yogis understand the origin of suffering. May all yogis eradicate the origin of suffering. May all yogis realize the cessation of suffering. May all yogis develop the path leading to the cessation of suffering. May all yogis realize the real peace in the very near future. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.